If you saw this set listed on Marketplace for $130, but you had to do a 3-hour round trip to get it, would you? This was definitely one of my more questionable decisions on furniture, but spoiler alert, it was worth it in the end. Normally, I don't like to spend this much when I am furniture flipping, but this set was unique. It had that gorgeous bowed front, it had the scalloping detail at the bottom, it was exceptionally well made out of reclaimed timber, so it had some really interesting characteristics to it. It just had that failing orange finish, but this is a very easy fix. So follow along if you want to see exactly what I do to refinish this set and how much I sell it for in the end. I started by removing all of these ring pulls and I had absolutely no intention of reusing them. This is just a personal thing for me. I do not like ring pulls. They tend to dent the fronts of drawers and I do think they look a little bit dated. Come for me in the comments if you love them. I know you ring pull lovers are out there, but they're just not a vibe for me. I then moved on to cleaning and I'm using a 50-50 mix of water to vinegar. This is just white vinegar. There is cleaning vinegar available. I've used both. They're not really that much different. But if you have something that's especially dirty, you could use crud cutter, but vinegar is also great for removing any musty old smells. Both of these bedsides had little tea trays that you could pull out just above that top drawer. But in order to actually get them out, most of them have a little stopper, a little block, so that the tray doesn't fall out when you pull it out. So you can see here that I'm just using my chisel and my hammer to jimmy those off, and that way I am able to just pull that tea tray out. Once it was removed, I went back to cleaning. I made sure that there were no cobwebs underneath, that all of the dust was out of the drawer runners, that everything had been given a thorough wipe over. And this is just one of those steps that can seem really tedious when you are refinishing, but it is an essential step. You don't want to go to all of this effort only to have your finish fail in the end because you haven't cleaned down properly. So make sure that you give it a thorough, effective clean and set yourself up for success. When it comes to removing an existing finish, you've got a couple of ways that you can go about it. You could use a carbide scraper like I am doing now, you could use a chemical-based stripper, or you can just jump straight in with a sander. And which route you take is going to be determined by the finish that is on your piece. In this case, it was a thin varnish, so whilst the carbide scraper is removing a bit of that finish, it's not really biting in and taking all of it off. So this is my indicator to jump straight in and sand. It's important to remember when you are selecting a grade of sandpaper that they're graded from low to high. So the lower the number, the coarser the grit, the higher the number, the finer the grit. And when it comes to removing finish, yes, you can jump straight in with an 80 or a 60 grit sandpaper, which will remove the finish very quickly. But those grades, because they're so coarse, will create a lot of micro texture on the surface of your piece. This micro texture manifests as a pigtail swirl looking pattern on the top of your piece. And you may not see it when you are sanding lighter timber, but you absolutely see it later on when you go to stain or paint wash. So the way to avoid this is to start with a middle grade of sandpaper. I start with 120 grit, I move to a 150 or a 180, and then I finish with 240 grit. My next step was to use some Timbermate wood filler to fill in the little indentation that the handles had made over time by spinning around. This is a fantastic wood filler for anything non-structural. So think little cracks, indentations like this, nail holes, but I didn't actually fill anything else on this set. This was reclaimed timber, so it did have a lot of imperfections, and that's the nature of reclaimed timber. There's old nail holes, there's some little cracks, some little splits, but it gives that rustic farmhouse authentic look in my opinion, so I left those. While that was drying, I moved on to the exact same process, just on the bigger chest of drawers. So I cleaned everything down with vinegar and water. I'm sanding in straight away with that 120 grit sandpaper. And when I got to the drawers, I actually used my sheet sander to get in. So when you're using an orbital sander, obviously it's a circle, it's not going to get into squares. So when you get to the corner of each of the drawers, you're going to end up with a triangle of existing finish that you can't get off. And you can do some hand sanding to remove that, but I have a sheet sander which is a rectangle shape, and that gets into that space really effectively. Once my wood filler had dried, I moved on to sanding that down by hand before removing all of the dust, ready for stain. For this set, I'm using a water-based interior stain by CABOTS. This is in the color Brazilian Roast, and you can get this one at Bunnings. You just take that tin up to the paint counter and ask for the Brazilian Roast shade. I'm applying with a spray gun here, so I did have to dilute this down in my spray gun. It's quite a jelly sort of consistency, so you do need to water it down in most cases. And when you do water down a stain, you do have to apply more coats. But what I find is it's the ease of application when you are applying with a spray gun. It's not as strong and you've got more work time, so you can spray large sections. I'm actually counting in my head while I'm doing this on each section, so I allow it to sit for around 20 seconds before coming back and wiping off the excess. I did a total of 3 coats, just repeating this process, just spraying it on, wiping off the excess, leaving it to dry for 2 hours. I sand down with a brown paper bag in between each of those coats, and this is after 3 coats. To seal this bedroom set, I chose a polyurethane. This one is a water-based poly. I did 2 coats on the body of the piece and I did 3 coats up the top, sanding in between each of those coats with that same brown paper bag, which is a fantastic way of being able to sand down any texture without it being too abrasive. And I mean, I just use the brown paper bags that I get from Coles when I do my shopping. I tear a little piece off and that's what I use in between these coats. Once everything was dry, I brought it inside. I put the tea trays back into place and I put the little pieces of timber that I had removed back on to the underside. I chose a classic pool for this set, but I actually toned down the yellowy gold using a little bit of European gold rub and buff. Now here's a quick reminder of where this set started out, and this is where we are now. You can see why I'm obsessed with this shade. It's the perfect mid-brown tone. It's not too warm, it's not too cool, it's not too dark either, but you still get a beautiful depth of color. I love that you can still see all of those characteristics, all of the inclusions with that reclaimed timber. It's got some stunning timber grain in there. The handles work really cohesively together. I think it's got an overall beautiful farmhouse rustic vibe to it. I sold this set for $980 within 24 hours of listing, and I'd love to know what you guys think of that. Is this one a nail or a fail?